This is The Wire for 2300 Zulu, September 29th, 2025. Precedence is routine. Information cutoff is 2200. Bottom line up front. Targeted mass shootings strike Michigan, North Carolina, and Texas. Drone reports continue in Denmark. Beginning with international events, in Denmark, various drone incursions continue as before. Over the weekend, Denmark ordered the grounding of all civilian drones throughout their nation in an attempt to isolate the incursions that continue to take place at airports and sensitive military sites. Analysts comment. This morning, Denmark unexpectedly called up an unknown number of reservists into active military service. France and Sweden have also begun the process of sending counter-UAS systems to Denmark to help secure the upcoming EU summit in Copenhagen on Wednesday. It's not supposed to be a major summit, comparatively speaking, but security is still a concern due to the general tensions throughout Europe remaining high. On the home front, in Illinois, civil unrest regarding immigration detention facilities continued over the weekend, with several arrests being made at riots outside the facility in Broadview. DHS sources state that 11 people were arrested overnight at this facility, at least one of which was arrested with an improvised explosive device of some kind in his backpack. In Texas, Sunday night, a mass shooting was reported at the Lucky Eagle Casino in Eagle Pass. Local authorities identified the shooter as Kurian Rashad Jones, who was apprehended after a short vehicle pursuit. 2 people were killed and 5 others wounded during the attack. Analysts comment. The circumstances leading up to this attack are not clear. The only details that have been released are those of the casualty figures and the name of the shooter. Considering the context of the location itself being a casino, it's likely that the motive for the shooting is related to that. However, it's still not clear as to if this was an impulsive shooting or something more planned. More details are expected as court docs get released later this week. In North Carolina, a mass shooting was reported at the American Fish Company in Southport. Local authorities state that Nigel Edge was operating a small boat in the waters off of the waterfront when he began firing at the shoreline in the general direction of the American Fish Company and the Frying Pan restaurant, which was immediately adjacent to the Fish Company, which was hosting the usual live music and entertainment typical for most establishments in the area. 3 people were killed and several others were wounded in the attack. Edge was able to egress from the area down the Intracoastal Waterway before he was apprehended while loading his boat at a nearby boat launch. In Michigan, Sunday morning, a mass shooting was conducted at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc. One gunman conducted a complex attack at the church at approximately 10:30 a.m., targeting those arriving for services that morning. The assailant began the attack by ramming his vehicle into the church before exiting and conducting the shooting phase of the attack. At some point during the engagement, the attacker is suspected to have deliberately set the church on fire before he was engaged and the attack halted. After the attack, multiple IEDs were discovered in the assailant's vehicle, which either failed to detonate or were not used during the attack. Concerning casualties, 4 parishioners were killed and 8 more were wounded, the conditions of which are not yet known. Analyst comments for this wire. The suspected shooter in the Michigan attack has been identified as Thomas Jacob Sanford, who was killed during the attack. Right now, reports conflict on who ended the threat. Some reports state that law enforcement engaged the shooter, whereas other reports have stated that it was a parishioner who was concealed carrying a firearm in violation of church policy. Either way, the shooter was killed and the attack stopped. From a very wavetop level, the randomness yet the deliberation taken to plan these attacks is the most useful bit of information to glean from both incidents. Both the Michigan and North Carolina attackers planned their respective attacks for some time, selecting soft targets that they knew would not be protected or offer much resistance. Both attackers also used vehicles for rapid ingress to the attack site. The Southport shooter clearly planned to egress from the attack site after the attack and thus conducted the shooting from some distance, as the attacker valued his own survival. Conversely, the Michigan shooter closed with his selected targets and engaged from close range, as he very clearly did not intend to survive the encounter. As more of these attacks continue, these are the details most immediately useful to consider in hardening defenses for the more vulnerable targets in society. This concludes The Wire for 2300 Zulu, September 29th, 2025.